All right. Hey, just on time. Oh, now I'm late.
Now you're late.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Water Management Committee meeting, Wednesday, the 3rd of April. Sure, I'm glad this didn't happen on the 1st of April.
I know.
Well, that could have been some fun.
That would have been.
Okay, this is our official call for order. I'll have the first caller pass through.
Caller number one.
Caller number one is not there. Okay. Any committee comment?
No.
In Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Normally with Chuck here, he would be.
Yeah, I was at the meeting. I'm sure you're going to get a report during the board meeting as well. And yeah, and it was. I give a lot of credit to Chuck when it came to the two wells that I think it was 37,000 and 27,000 of those wells. It was funny how they made the argument that the water level's going up, but we still got to replace the well because I forget correct me if I'm wrong, but something about the earthquake caused this area where the perforations were to rust out.
Yeah, I don't remember the measurement, but it had caved in the bottom half,
That's right.
bottom
So
portion of the.
The argument that was made was that at some point in the past, water levels dropped to the point where air was introduced into the perforation area. The air then caused rust, which would not have occurred if the water was there. Therefore, when the earthquake occurred later, even though the water level had probably risen at that point, and the
Oh.
perforations were fully covered, they had weakened. And therefore, you could attribute the collapse of the bottom part of the well to the fact that water levels might have dropped in the past to a level to have caused some rust there, even though the well was 45 years old, something like that. That was the argument presented, I believe.
Interesting hypothesis, but how did they prove their position?
Chuck did the best he could. He did a good job. He says the bottom line is well levels are going up. And he didn't bring it up, and he eventually will, because I wish he would have said is all they're trying to do is put as many feathers in their hat of wells dry for reasons. We know what reasons that is. So, and to me, that's I don't know. When you look at their prediction for wells gone dry, it was supposed to go dry, it should be in the 40s by now, number 40 or so, when you look at their charts from the original plan, and they really have none, because the other ones weren't really dried or more damaged than anything, type of thing. And then also, one comment that was made there that I want to bring up, and I talked to George about this already, to make it clear to the GA, and Chuck might as well. And he tried to, I think, briefly, when Phil Hall referenced that, we have all the data from the white paper. Remember, he said, we've looked at all the data from the white paper he was referring to. He says, we got that quite a number of years ago. That was the original white paper that was written by the major farms, Coastal Geothermal, Cerros Valley Minerals, and the Water District, and presented to the GA about 2017, roughly. And so he keeps saying that's the data and so someone needs to make clear to them that it's the white paper on water and storage, the newest white paper.
Right.
So he seems to think, Chuck tried to straighten him out, but I don't know whether he got through to it or not. But I believe most of the board members think that as well.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And I don't know if there's any, I'm sure Chuck will fill you in. I don't think anything came out of it that we need to decide on.
There was one other thing that I thought was of importance. So the GA in their NEPA and CEQA documentation announced that they needed additional funding. We were already aware of this, that there would be another, I believe, approximately 10 miles of pipeline to in the California City area. I believe it's from in the vicinity of the Mojave Tank Farm or some larger pipeline to the original connection point. It's going to add some considerable cost to the pipeline. Now, according to the GA plans, the pipeline that they're building is large enough to support over 6 or 7 or 8,000 acre feet a year, but the connection at California City is a limiting factor. And therefore, if they ever want to get to the point where they can deliver that much water, they have to add this additional 10 miles of pipeline. It wasn't in their original NEPA CEQA documentation, and they needed to add that in there. And that's, I think they said something like $300,000 to do the additional work to have that in there. There was some cost to it. So there was a lengthy discussion at the GA. The important part to us is that the GA formally recognized and sort of is putting into their planning process the fact that at some point in the future, if you look at their chart about how much water they think needs to be delivered, that could be 20 years from now, there would need to be this additional pipeline that would need to be built to fully enable the pipeline to carry as much water as they project it might need by 2070. And so there was and I think Chuck made it clear that he wasn't in support of that additional stuff, essentially because he was not in support of the pipeline. So that was, but I think that piece of it, understanding that there is this additional cost that would have to be incurred to make the pipeline fully functional, is the important piece to us, for us to understand.
Was that voted on and then approved, or?
It was.
Yeah.
I believe Chuck voted against it.
So they'll just add that to the tax rules, I guess.
Well, to the capital project
Yeah,
cost.
one would assume they would go out and advocate for funding and try to get the government to pay for some of it, and what they could, I don't know how that gets done. It is far in the future, but it gives you a more complete picture of what the pipeline project plan looks like.
When does that have to be done, though? Does it need to be done right away, or?
No, it's like 20 years from now. So like,
Oh, okay.
so the initial deliveries, the initial pipeline design is probably capable, I'm going to estimate, 3,000 acre feet per year. That's kind of what they've said that in the initial years of operation is going to be delivered. Then there's a point where this restricted flow at California City, if the valley were to grow, we're not sure that it would grow to the need, no one can predict when does the valley need more than 3,000 acre feet of water at some point in the future, given the growth rate and all the other things that occur. When would that occur? Nobody believes that would be anytime soon. So in the
So
20-year timeline.
just to clarify, there's from some point to here, the pipeline is going to be designed for 8,000 acre feet. I think that's what they said, because they want an average of 5. Okay. But from that other point into to hook up in Cal City or wherever it is, wherever they hook up is only designed for about 3.
Correct.
But so how do you operate an 8,000 acre foot per year pipeline? And let's assume they get the full 3,000 acre feet. Isn't that an issue with the size of the pipe in terms of you're not,
You can't fill it
you can't fill it
or maintain it.
or maintain it?
The water would move at a much lower velocity.
But they'll still fill the pipe is what
Would
you're
fill the
saying.
pipe.
Yeah,
You could fill the pipe
you
and
could
move it at a
fill
lower
the pipe. The
velocity.
problem is it's a time issue. The longer the water takes to get through the pipe
It
to us,
sits in the
the
pipe. Yeah.
more that it develops unhealthy contaminants,
Okay.
PTHMs and other things. So we call that the age of water. I think Jason would probably, and Renee might want to clarify my technical expertise, but basically you don't want that water moving really slowly through the
So
pipe.
if it was
gets
a full,
cold and it's
it
not
was a
good.
full 8,000 acre feet coming, let's just say that we get it from point A to point B in an hour. But if you're only doing 3,000, it may take 2 hours or an hour and a half.
So
In the
Which-
long, because it's disinfected with sodium hypochlorite, you run the risk of disinfection byproducts the longer it sits.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
So that tells me how difficult it's going to be. And okay, I'm going to write this down this time. The name of the company that's doing the analysis for us, the financial,
Clean Energy Capital.
Clean Energy. I don't know. For some reason I can't put that. Yeah, that's
I
sort
think
of
we
a
all
weird
have that
name.
issue. But
But that you can see how difficult this is for them, because they're going to have to come up with these costs
Right.
in operation costs. And if you're operating at 3,000 acre feet opposed to 8,000 acre feet, all the things that Jason brings up about how you're going to have to treat it and everything may change. They have a difficult time.
Yeah, they're gonna have to give us a range of values.
They're going to have to give us
Like
all
a
kinds of ranges.
yeah, there will be.
Parametric exercise.
Yeah.
So I think the way that they talked to me about presenting the data is sort of like, so they have these projected, like this year, they're gonna, in the initial year, it's gonna be 3,000 acre feet. And the way they want to break it down is by year cost of the water per acre foot. So they're gonna have these operating costs, and the operating costs are gonna escalate over time. The
Right.
amount of water will change over time, and they'll do some math and say, at this point in time, the first year of operation, the water's going to cost this much per acre foot to be delivered to you. That's the cost. And why that's important is because the lower the volume, the more the cost. So like
Right.
the fixed cost of operating the pipeline aren't going to change much. A lot of things aren't going to change that are fixed costs. So effectively, the more water you push through that pipeline, the cheaper it gets per acre foot. But it's initially designed to deliver a low volume. So the initial costs, as you look at like, this is what it costs an acre foot upon initial delivery, are going to be pretty high. And these are things that we need to, these are different ways of looking at the cost of water as it's delivered.
But as the amount of water goes up, the thing that does go up proportionally is the wheeling cost and the state water projects.
Correct.
Co-
The AVEC,
cost.
there will be an AVEC.
All those
fee that's-
costs, yeah.
So those will go up as well, but
Based on amounts you're,
But-
yeah,
but a
that's what
big-
you're actually paying
so-
for the water.
so it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see how that math plays out. and
I'm
that's why we-
curious, yeah.
Just to see, because they said it could be significant. I guess we'll see when we see the numbers.
I'll be
So I
anxious
think
to
it's
see
why it's
this.
important.
I'll be anxious to see that. I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be, yeah,
Me too. Do we know if, I mean, we're talking about best case.
yeah.
If the state water authority says you can only have 50%, then we've
Yeah.
got, we've got.
That's right, that's right, yeah.
We
Every
did
year
have
could
s-
do this, yeah.
We did have some discussions with them about that, and we're trying to clarify that. They believe that they will be able to get all the water that they've purchased, that they purchase through the pipeline every year, except potentially if there's like zero allocation, which
Well,
only
yeah,
occurs
yeah.
very rarely.
Well, the allocation goes downhill. It was at 15%. The state water project recently raised it to 30% for this coming year. They doubled it based on the snowpack. But again, that's only 30% that's allocated to each of the 21 contractors. And they in turn pass that down the line to their subcontractors, which we would be one of through somebody. So that means that if we bought 8,000 acre feet from them, then we're eligible to get 2,400. Then that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So I'm just saying that clean energy,
And so
they have their work cut out for them.
Yes, they do. And
Yeah.
those are all questions
Yeah.
that we hope to get
And we're getting
Get a hand.
cooperation from the GA in terms of costs. They're giving us,
So far, they've been very cooperative. Just today, I asked them, how much they had gotten for the design, because Clean Energy Capital has to factor in the design cost.
right,
But that was, the GA got a 7.7 or $7.6 million grant to cover that.
right.
And so that's important to Clean Energy Capital, because that's a cost they don't have to include. They say
Right.
that was paid for by a grant. And so far, we seem to be getting cooperation, which is good.
And we just have to be careful that we fill in those gaps of what they don't have.
Yeah.
That we feel that need to be there. And that's when clean
You know,
energy
the
and,
difficult pieces will be what's AVEC's delivery charge?
Yeah.
What's it gonna cost to operate the pipeline? Those things are gonna be, they're gonna be guesses by
Okay.
experts who make those guesses.
What's our best guess on when we need to have that data? We're preparing ourselves for pushing back on the project because of cost. There'll be a point if we get too far down the road where
Yeah, I think we're
Right.
talking a couple of months, we should have some
yeah,
numbers
I'm
presented.
hoping
by
60,
Clean
90
Energy.
days most that we,
Yeah, so yes, as we look at that, we will certainly, I think there'll be a lot of discussion, and I think.
I'm assuming there'll be some pre-presentation too, maybe in 30 or 60 days, we might see something from them.
Oh, I
and-
expect that I will be dialoguing with Clean Energy Capital probably every couple of weeks about where they're at, what kind of information they need, what sort of estimates they have, what is the direction that they've.
And I have no problem unless you do, but this, to me, this is at a public board meeting when they do the presentations and it's discussed what they're looking at and how it's coming together. I don't have a problem with that being presented to the board in our open sessions. Because everyone knows we're doing it. We might as well,
Yeah.
everyone can now look at how it's developing.
sure.
Which I think is
And
important.
comment too.
Yeah, and
because
comment
there
as
may
well.
Be some valuable comments that.
Yeah.
Insights that maybe we aren't thinking about that we can.
I'm sure Renee will have some. Not you, Renee, the other Renee.
Shoot.
Yeah, all right.
And the next GA meeting, is it next week or
Next week on Wednesday.
Yeah.
next Wednesday
And I'll miss that one too. I'll be traveling back on that day, I hope.
in April?
But I'll watch it. I'll be in the car driving and I'll put it on, so I'll listen to it. Yeah.
And just so you know, Renee will be giving part of a presentation at the GA board meeting
Oh,
on our consolidation efforts that are being sort of jointly worked with the GA.
Ah,
darn, I'm gonna miss that. Oh, well.
they'll videotape it.
Yeah, videotape it for me. Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay, then, well, future LADWP aqueduct water releases. I guess along with that particular topic, we've been recently discussing strategies about working with LADWP for other potential relationships.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, like, one of the things that we've been looking at, both online, is the AEM data that we were, I believe the district was a pioneer in the use of the AEM in California, and California has now adopted it, and there's a lot of videos online. I've sent a couple to you board directors to view, looking at getting some put on our website. But one of the things that the AEM data is reported to be very good at is finding places where you can do percolation versus injection or other things. And I've queried some of our experts, and I believe that when you go on the California website, they don't have the data published, but they have the maps where the AEM was flown over the whole state. And so, like, we were talking to our experts, can that data be used to look at places in the valley? Because they did fly over the Indian Wells Valley as well, although that data's not up. I asked Tim, our expert, whether that could be used to sort of try to identify places where percolation might be possible. And his answer was yes, but then we have to get the data and look at it closely. So that's,
I know the GA looked at a lot of areas for percolation for various reasons as well.
Yeah.
My question is who are we coordinating with at LADWP for the release that's coming? Because ideally, we'd like to coordinate in such a way that we get it released where we won't need it.
Yeah.
And so who are you talking to now?
Chuck Krieger at Krieger and Stewart is making contact and trying to make contact with the right people at LADWP.
We're way behind the 8 ball on this, way behind. Because they'll be releasing water, I'm predicting, in the next few months.
Well, once that snow starts to melt.
It won't, man, have you seen it up from here? I've never seen, that's even more than last year.
I saw a report, well, it's actually not quite, we're about half what we had last year, but it's still over the national, it's over the
Yeah.
state average by about 10%. So it's a lot of snow.
It's going to be more than they can handle. And I'm just saying that we've been talking about for a year now, and we're nowhere with LADWP.
Right.
Nowhere.
And last year we were getting regular contact.
Just to let us know how much was released.
But yeah, there's
The contact,
a question about where.
yeah, the contact I was talking about is what is the plans with LAWP to do water banking or capture that water here? And what are they willing to work with us on and let us happen? And we're nowhere on that. I have an issue with that. We've been a year. And here we're getting ready for more release, and I'm suspecting it'll probably be between 8 and 10,000 acre feet again,
Well, they'll
just
probably-
here.
Probably dump at the same places they did last year.
Yeah, and we're going to be sitting there and doing whatever it goes and show no impact to the aquifer. Because, yeah, so I just think that we need to move on this. Get after Chuck, get some names, start calling people LAWP. I know we have contacts with LAWP.
Right.
We have before. Don used to talk to him pretty regularly, and they used to call him all the time. But I don't know why we're dragging our feet on this one.
So we.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know,
Message received, sir.
yeah.
Recall we had, you weren't here, George, but we had Krieger and Stewart give us some ideas about what we could do to slow the flow
Mhm.
out of Dixie Creek.
Mhm.
And so we had the sandbag idea and all this stuff that never came to fruition because I think we ran into permitting problems.
It was, yeah, I'm watching Renee because I'm going to ask her about that. Yeah.
So there were barriers to us implementing these ideas that we thought were low impact, but we never got permission. When we submitted
Right.
the ideas and by the time they'd stopped releasing, we still hadn't received
Any
permission.
digging or any, to me, the best place where if they can direct that flow, because I know that Meadowbrook would work with us, a lot of flow went towards them. And they did a lot of trenching and everything else to keep that flow off their fields and other places. So if it could all be directed there, then that's something we could actually do without tons of permits. But where we were talking about, Renee, did we ever get the permit? We just stopped. We didn't have to go any farther.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was working. I don't remember if we got a permit, but we weren't able to do what we wanted to do just because of the impact that we could have with critters out there.
Right.
The problem is the flow just didn't get to our properties
Really.
often enough.
Right.
It really stayed to the west most of the
So
time.
we'd be doing everything off our property.
Yeah, I mean, it would get there and then the next day would be gone, so the idea of, damming up all this area in the wash really probably would not have worked.
When I did a tour up there with the people from Meadowbrook, Eileen and Eddie, they showed me a place there's a couple places where LADWP releases. And and the one release that occurs comes across their property, starts headed towards the base.
Mhm.
That's the one they're mostly worried about. So with their digging and trenching and everything they did, it all sort of it landed up right in there. So maybe there's something we can do there, but I don't know on with their
I mean,
agreement.
they can do it,
Yeah.
but if we do it, then it becomes a project.
Yeah,
Under,
but
So,
the-
yeah, does it have, to if it's on, yeah, I think
yeah,
Chuck
the
asked that
stream
question.
alteration thing, and that was the thing is that this, when it was flowing, it could not go outside the boundary of the naturally occurring wash.
hmm
So our dam would have been like 2 feet high.
hmm
So,
Know how much water you
so,
think you
there-
could get out
So
of
there's
that.
got to
one
be
of
an
the
answer.
things, let me mention one of the things that Krieger and Stewart has talked about with respect to that. And this is not going to happen immediately. This is not going to happen in the short term, and it would be a project. But what Krieger and Stewart said is, if the water doesn't go into the wash, i.e. you built a conveyance system out of the LADWP aqueduct that never let it go into the natural environment anyway, because it's an artificial release. It's not a natural release of water.
Right.
If you captured it that way and then channeled it to an area and you had a basin to recharge it, you would avoid all of the sort of environmental impacts. But that's a relatively costly project, and it would take, SEPA, CEQA, and all the other hoops would have to be jumped through. But it is something that we need to consider. And as we start to have dialogue with LADWP, one of the things is in a wet year, like, along the entire length, how much do they need to release? How much could they potentially release here in a wet year? And start to do economics of scale. Like if it turns out that, like, in the valley here, they released 10 or 15,000 acre feet, but they could have released 25 or 30,000 acre feet, but they didn't want to just flood the valley out. And we determine that there are volumes that justify the size of or cost of that type of project. And we ultimately then also find proper places to do percolation and or injection. That's more of a long-term look at how that might work and how we might avoid some of the pitfalls we saw last year. And then we got that from Krieger and Stewart. So
The trick is to get LADWP to pay for everything.
Oh, that would be nice.
And if you do that, then they're going to probably consider it water banking. And then in negotiations of how much water goes in or do we get?
Right.
But even if, you can get as high as 50%, you get as low, it just depends on what they want to do. But then they pay for it. And that's where I was hoping, and when we talked to LADWP, what are the options? What options do you look that are possible for us to recover this water during these high seasons when you have to get rid of it somewhere and address it from there? If I was LAWP, I'd say, let's put a system in and we can cover that water, and then we can also do water banking. And that's where I thought we were headed. But we just need to talk to LAWP. We're getting nowhere here until we talk to them. Yeah.
I'm guessing, yeah, and in those discussions, it'd be nice to find out if there is value to them, and I'm guessing there might be, to do water banking, even if it's not one of those super snowpack years. Because we know that they're under construction at Hayward Reservoir
Right.
to raise the North Dam. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
that's obviously going to give them some more relief than they've had in the past, but
And they were interested, they showed an interest, not just the original time many years ago, but even during when we were in the GA meeting, Don would talk about it. And of course, it was all poo-pooed on by John Vallejo that, no, they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. And yet Don's talked with people and they were still interested in 2018, 2019, in those areas and doing water banking. And then we just quit talking. And then I don't know whether I would just say that we kept the lines of communication open. But again, their concern was, where does INYO land on this for water banking? So if we talk to them and we say, let's approach this from water capture during those overflow times, within the back of your head, it's now there if a banking agreement could be made. But we get nowhere till we talk to them.
Yeah.
Because that's where it is. And if like I said, it's a $55 million project that they were willing fully to pay for. And we do nothing but have benefit from it.
I suggest, you've already had your admin exec meeting.
Yeah.
Before Lauren gets finalized on the agenda, you might talk with Jim about allocating a little bit of time in closed session about some other topics related to this that I don't think is appropriate to talk in this venue.
Okay.
And then that'll help us strategize a little bit more freely about how we want to engage and what options we might have to help.
I just want to move along,
There's
yeah.
There has been some movement.
Yeah.
Michael, but there
Yeah.
has been some movement that I don't think is, that I'm at liberty to talk about here.
Yeah.
So, So we'll talk Monday.
Well, I won't be here. I'm,
We'll videotape it.
yeah, videotape it for me, but, no, David will be,
If you
taking
could
over the meeting.
at least make mention of that to Jim, that there might be some discussion around LADWP.
I'll make sure it gets on the,
Yeah, make sure,
Closed
just
session
put a note
agenda.
on there, yeah. Yeah, make it tougher for David to get done in an hour and a half.
Well, no, I share your concern.
Yeah, it's just,
it's-
I've been talking about this and we've been talking about this, we've been talking about this. And here we still sit with nothing.
And it's not
Yeah.
every year they've done releases, so.
Right.
So it's, I hope it continues in the future, but I don't know if how that plays into their thinking as well.
And they may, who knows? I mean, it may be as simple as we're not interested in water banking anymore,
May not.
period. And then that sort of ends the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Potential impact of recycled water on districts' need for imported water. Is that your topic to lead?
it is, there's nothing much to report at this point in time until the city gets around to building their wastewater treatment plant. But the one thing I will comment on is as we talk about various options, we found out about a project in El Paso, Texas, where they're doing a similar scale, 3,000 acre feet per year injection project. We're going to have a call with them next week to talk about some of the engineering aspects. What is the soil profiles? What drove them to injection? Why didn't they do percolation? Sounds like they may be weighing the cost benefits similar to what we're doing. They have some cost estimates about what these type of injection wells, and of course, that's all pertinent to what would it cost for us to inject recycled water,
Mhm.
or, if we chose to water off the LADWP aqueduct or whatever. So the GA is aware of that project as well. And I think we've gotten over a little bit of a hurdle in the sense that we're all, both parties agree that injection is possible. Even the thing about El Paso is they're using gravity to push the water down. So I don't know, we have to figure out like how far the importance of the depth to the water table when you're using gravity as the injection is really important. If you're 20 feet below, you don't get a lot of pressure on that pipe, but if
Right.
you're 500 feet down, so we wanted to compare like sort of how similar are they to us in terms of how far you have from the surface to the actual injection point, how much pressure does that generate, how much flow do you get in compared to how much you can pump out? And I believe they're doing an ASR type system. And so we're going to share some data on that as well. And that's relevant to the recycled water project. It might allow us to, at some point in the future, calculate some costs on that so we can have a better comparison.
You
between
said
the
that's in
difference.
El Paso, Texas?
El Paso, Texas, not El Paso area here. Yes.
Okay. And is that project just underway, or is it completed, or?
I believe it's in the planning stages is what I believe Justin told me.
Okay.
So, and thanks to Justin and our engineering folks for
Yeah, no,
figuring
that'd be
out that
really
was
nice
going
to
on.
hear.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right? If you get 500 foot ahead of water,
Yeah.
it's a fair amount of pressure.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's what we have for that.
Okay. Do we have any discussion around alternate water supplies?
I don't know at this time. This is about the exploration of the subbasins within the valley, particularly El Paso, I think is what it was about.
So the only question I have is in the 2023 report, and I talked to some of our technical experts about this, is that the GA's report says that somehow the El Pasos were going up 2,000 acre feet a year, year after year after year. And then last year in this super rainy year, somehow 5,000 acre feet disappeared from there. And I think it's like, we didn't really understand what sort of analysis would, it certainly is counterintuitive. I'm not saying that the science was bad. I'm not saying we just didn't understand how that would occur. So there's this sort of, like analysis that they do of where the water is. And when we look at the El Paso and we go like, it just seems highly improbable that somehow they would,
Did it all spill into Fremont?
I don't know. I mean, so those are just questions. We didn't want to make a big deal of it in some sort of formal argument with the GA over their report. It was in there.
It might be worth engaging with Tim. I remember him being critical of the Thyssen polynomial approach that was being used.
He was
and
up there,
I
yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, it's kind of complicated.
It
but when you
is.
look at it, it goes, okay, I understand what they're trying to
Yeah.
do. And with limited points that
Yeah.
that you have wells, I guess this is
The best you can
the
do.
best you can do, right?
Yeah.
But Tim had suggested somewhere along the line that they actually redrew the polynomial.
Yeah, they did. I thought they increased the number of them.
Yeah.
Because remember, the fewer you have, the less accurate your data. So if they're able to increase more, yeah,
They did something.
something like that,
And-
yeah.
And I'm sure when you do that, your data year to year is going to be. all-
Well, it certainly shows that if that's the method that was used, it certainly points out that like maybe the data doesn't always line up with things that would probably most engineers would say that makes sense.
There's not a lot of data points in the
Yeah.
Paso
I
area.
think where Doug was right on this is where this would help. It may not be new water, but if the water district was to relocate a pumping well there and relieve one of our wells here that are here, that would make a big difference because if truly, and I always believe it's an elevated sub-basin
Mhm.
and it does have a lot of water flowing into it. And when that water isn't being pumped, it's going into Fremont. I mean, that's why they tried to annex that at one time, Fremont Valley. They tried to annex that into their aquifer. So if the water district was to somehow be able to afford to put a well up there and then relieve one of our wells down here, that would affect the aquifer here in terms of you might see more rise in the aquifer down here. But I thought that's where Chuck wanted to head when he started bringing this all up, because I know he pushed these projects.
Well, this will be an interesting, and in our partnership that we have with Clean Energy Capital, we will see how that goes and how cost effective it is. But some of the things that are going on now is Krieger and Stewart are doing these sort of conceptual designs that aren't full blown engineering designs, but they're enough for Clean Energy Capital to take and look at.
Right.
And so like we might find that the combination of Krieger and Stewart doing sort of conceptual idea designs and then Clean Energy Capital putting costs to it might be a good way to compare different future alternatives that are available. For things like putting a well up there, how much would the pipe cost? Could we
Yeah,
put in a little
yeah.
electrical generation to recover some of the electricity at the bottom? I think Mallory suggested that because it flows downhill, that might be possible. Those are
Yeah.
all things that we can
Yeah.
sort of factor into these, but but what you really need is the best, like any public works planning project, when you're weighing alternatives, you need to have good cost estimates to compare to really say this is where, we think the best investment of public funds is.
Mhm. Okay. And the other topic we had approached in this category in the past was potentially having Wade Major come in and give us a summary of the
The brackish
word
water.
is-
Brackish water,
thinking the word
yes.
was just escaping me.
Yeah.
Is he anywhere near?
I would have to ask, Renee.
I think Renee was trying to contact him and.
Okay.
but, I mean,
Yeah,
before that.
Does-
I do not have
does
any
Wade
update for
work-
you on
Does he
that.
work for Meadowbrook or Mojave Pistachio?
Meadowbrook.
Meadowbrook. And then Anthony, I believe, I thought he maybe works for Meadowbrook as well.
Tony Brown.
Yeah, Anthony Brown, yeah.
Yeah, Tony works with, I'm not sure. I think he
Yeah.
works with Meadowbrook as well.
He may very well.
And then we got Teasdale because that's where I'm.
That's
confused,
right,
'cause
Teasdale.
Teasdale's the other guy that was,
All right.
I think.
I'd like to know where they are with that, because even if they've proven the fact that it's workable and it's just a matter of getting to the brackish water, which happens to be underneath the base, maybe there's some alternatives we can use that.
And there's been some in the community that have been trying to convince us that there's more sources of brackish around the valley.
Yeah.
Wells have gone dry or the MLS has gone up too high.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there may be other opportunities for us to pursue. I don't know, it probably isn't going to happen in the near term, but my vision of the area is we're probably going to have to eventually embrace brackish recovery because the fresh supply will probably go away sooner than the brackish. And when does that happen in time? 20 years, 30 years?
100 years, 200
100
years. But you're right, but where's ideally to collect brackish water and use it?
Yeah.
I think the Navy base is the one ideal place. And I keep saying that you had some other bases throughout the country that have gone to brackish water recovery. They're using plates, electrolysis and plates and such, different technology. Because anybody you remove from taking potable water helps us. Okay. I mean, you're still gonna have the argument that the brackish water is still coming out of our, and it's gonna lower everything. And the same thing with Cerros Valley Minerals, is that technology that maybe, you know, what's ever been developed. That's why we need a presentation. Is it something they might be interested in?
Sure.
Yeah,
If we could help them.
then all of a sudden they come
develop
off
their
of it.
own, all of a sudden we got 2,000 acres. of
Exactly.
water that-
So I don't think it's anything that needs to come off here. And in fact, you may want to put as a B on here still.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I'll
if
make
it's
a
up to
note of
you,
that
yeah, if you
and
wanna
talk
keep
with Amber about
Yeah,
adding that to the next version of this.
yeah.
Are you the keeper of these? Okay, yeah, would you do that, please? Was that clear what we're trying to do?
Yeah, under 6B.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Wow, we actually got an action item out of the meeting.
I know. There you go.
And the other action I'd recommend, is probably not something that needs to be written down, but if you don't have a phone number for Zadiva, I have it. And
Please.
we'd probably get that
Okay,
contact that he was using.
Oh, yeah, I got Don's too, as if you needed, we
I
can check, but
do.
yeah. He gave it to all of us, yeah. All right,
Okay, future agendas.
nothing.
We will call the meeting at 3:36.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your help, guys. Stimulated discussion.